And now Blinken even went beyond that, urging all UN member states to join in this effort to confront the scourge of racism, racial discrimination, and xenophobia. Blinken added that the invitation to the UN Special Rapporteur on contemporary forms of racism and the UN Special Rapporteur on minority issues was a first step in a plan to issue a standing invitation to all UN experts who report on human rights issues in the United States. Now, let me see if I have this straight. You invite people from the UN who hate the United States to come here on our soil to judge us without concern for their bias, their hatred, their prejudice, and their outright opposition and hostility to a democracy, to judge us? Never in history has this ever happened. You invite China, that has 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps, to judge us. Cuba, that's arresting journalists, beating and killing demonstrators who simply want food and liberty, to judge us. Venezuela, who tortures her own citizens. And Russia, run by a former KGB intel agent, where enemies of the government are poisoned or just disappear, to judge us. Why? What's in this for you? Who do you work for? You invite our enemies to visit the United States and investigate whether there are human rights issues stemming from the George Floyd murder, compile information and, quote, report back to the world? Are you stupid or crazy? You ask people with dirty hands to judge the most freedom-loving nation in the world, the country where people from those nations risk their lives to come here. And you invite them to address America's systemic racism against Africans and people of African descent in the context of law enforcement? Doesn't your Department of Justice do that? Why are you looking to corrupt foreign governments to judge if we're racist? Why don't you just write the report now? We all know what the narrative you want to cement is and what the report will ultimately say. It's the United Nations simply putting its imprimatur on your 1619 project. And by the way, how are you going to compile this information? Under what authority do foreigners collect additional information? Will they be going into police departments around the country demanding statistics and information? Will they be doing interviews? Do police have the right to refuse to answer questions by members of foreign countries? Under what authority do they even receive the information? Who will review the information to find out whether there is evidence to support their final report? And have you no confidence in the American system of justice? The one that, after a jury trial of his peers, convicted Derek Chauvin of murder? That's not enough for you? What about the federal government that's monitoring several police departments around the country? That's not enough for you? You need communist China's input? Communist Cuba's approval? You're like an idiotic, simplistic, naive, woke loser. You're not doing anything but creating division nationally and internationally. And speaking of Cuba, why aren't you taking measures if you're so into protecting the rights of the downtrodden and making sure that no one suffers from bias? Why aren't you supporting the Cuban people 90 miles away from our shore? Why is your Homeland Secretary, Mayorkas, saying not only that Cuban refugees should not come here, but that if they do, they'll be returned? Are you in favor of Cuba, a Marxist communist nation supported by another Marxist organization, Black Lives Matter? Why would you let people from the southern border in, but not the Cubans? Could it be the Cubans are Republicans and they will turn Florida a solid red, so you have to stop them? You invite a scandal-ridden organization, the United Nations, with its own history of corruption, to come here and judge us? The United Nations that has over 100 resolutions condemning the state of Israel, the one democracy in the Middle East. The same United Nations with its peacekeeping force that failed to stop the massacre of more than 8,000 men and boys by Bosnian forces. The same United Nations with its oil for food scandal, where sex abuse scandals by UN peacekeepers in Haiti occurred. The UN, where millions of dollars in cash were funneled to aid North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Everyone knows what the United Nations is.
The U.S. is asking the United Nations, a cesspool of political bias, to come into the United States and investigate us on human rights. We look so ridiculous in the eyes of the world right now.
And remember, it was the UN World Health Organization that lied to us about the COVID-19 pandemic, mimicking the CCP talking points. Now, you may think the end game here will be the UN labeling the United States as a racist, oppressive nation. That certainly will happen. But it goes beyond identifying the United States as a racist nation and cementing the Democrat narrative. They will recommend reparations. This week, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, urged a wide range of reparations over racism and has urged countries to fully fund a wide range of reparation measures to address the legacies of slavery, colonial rule, and racial discrimination. Yes, it will go beyond identifying the United States as a racist nation. The drumbeat has begun.